The words of Mary Oliver. What can I say that I have not said before? So I'll say it again. The leaf has a song in it. In stone is the face of patience. Inside the river there is an unfinishable story, and you are somewhere in it, and it will never end until all ends. Take your busy heart to the art museum and the Chamber of Commerce, but take it also to the forest. The song you heard singing in the leaf when you were a child is still singing. I am of years lived so far 74, and the leaf is still singing. The reading comes from a short little essay called The Sum of Our Summers by Craig Wilson. Remember when summer was summer? When it really stood for something? When every day was a holiday, every outing an adventure? When a friend and a two-stick popsicle was all that was needed to fill an empty August afternoon? Life was an empty calendar, but never empty. There were forts to build, and inner tubes to ride, and sprinklers to leap through. Summer spread out before us like a picnic blanket laden with goodies. So much to sample, so much time. So what happened? When did the endless summer end? No one told us those magical nights of fireflies and lightning bugs would burn out. Like most everything, summer is wasted on youth. I hated summer camp when I was a kid. I cried to come home. Now I'd kill to return. I'd weave those plastic boondoggles with the best of them. I'd swim and I'd hike and I'd square dance if that's what my counselor told me to do. I'd sit around the campfire and burn marshmallows on a stick and sing my heart out. Remember when you never wore shoes? When you got one haircut and it was good all summer? You traveled light back then, not even a comb. You didn't have to worry about where your next drink was coming from. Kool-Aid was served by the gallons in bright purple and green tin glasses, condensation dripping down the sides, lime, strawberry, orange, grape. Now it's iced tea in a paper cup, no sugar, on the run, back to work. There was no getting back to anything when summer was summer. There was nothing to get back to. No Rolodex, no message lights flashing. You could just sit under a tree or on a stoop. You hung out for hours, for days, for weeks, for the summer. It seems too good now to have been true. You rode your bike and rode and rode and rode, going everywhere, going nowhere. The streamers on the handlebars fluttering in the wind. If you did go in a car, it usually meant being transported from the good life to an even better one, as if you needed a vacation from the carefree life you were already living. The beach, the mountains didn't matter. There was a swimming pool waiting, or a dock on a lake, an amusement park, miniature golf, a boat ride, maybe just an ice cream cone from the dairy bar down the road. Your only problem back then was your brother. Your brother, who could turn the back seat into a war zone quicker than anything. And so you yelled, and he yelled, and your father turned around and yelled. You know, now it's better to be the one yelling in the back seat than in the front. When was the last time you slept out on the lawn in a tent? And speaking of tents, when was the last time you smelled the inside of one? We all know that smell. All-inclusive vacations at luxury resorts have nothing on those summers. The service was good. The food to your liking. Your hot dogs were grilled to perfection. Black. Was it all too much of a good thing? Maybe. More than once you told your mom that you were bored. You'd ridden your bike 1,000 miles and back, and built a treehouse and vanquished all enemies from the forest around the woods in your yard. Oh, to have the luxury of being that bored again. Back when summer was still summer. Two summers ago, for the first time in probably 35 years, I went to camp. A lot about going to camp in your 60s is different from going to camp in your single-digit years. The food is even less appealing than you remember it. And the beds have gotten a lot worse. But you still get to go to bed whenever you feel like it, as an adult at least, and sleep as long as you like if you don't mind missing breakfast. You don't have to write home unless you want to. But apart from those differences between going as a grown-up and as a child, a lot about going to camp seemed suddenly familiar to me once I was there. When I was a kid, I went to day camp for several years, for a couple of weeks during the summer, and then I went away to camp for 2 weeks, one of the sleepaway camps up north of Watertown. And while later summers of childhood were spent at a family cottage, the experiences of being at camp made an indelible impression on me that resonated with being back of those ancient years ago, sitting around a campfire at night and singing the old standard camp songs and pulling on damp bathing suits that never, ever seemed to dry. Seeing children play capture the flag and finding that sand truly has a way of getting into the most unexpected locations. The camp I went to that summer was up in Maine. I was a camper, of course, in one way, but I was also on the staff. I was the chaplain of the week to the families and individuals who gathered year after year to share the bonding and camaraderie that came from people seeing each other bleary-eyed at 6:30 a.m. in the dining hall every day, and then for 21 meals after that, and performing all kinds of ridiculous acts at what they took the liberty of calling a talent show. Well, I wouldn't really want to go back right away to being the minister of the week. I would give being a camper, again, some serious thought. Though this particular camp was different from the ones that I knew as a child, there was a lot that was the same. And of course, I'm a very different person than I was 60 years ago. There is perhaps more that is the same, though, that is different. And being at camp again reminded me of all of that. It reminded me of a bunch of things that I learned a long time ago that I had forgotten, that I had somehow absorbed into my sensibilities, or at least I had forgotten where I had learned them. At camp. So in no particular order of significance or relation to each other, in the form of nuggets of little distilled wisdom and notes that resonated over and over in my head, I offer a few of my lessons from summer camp. The first is that the buddy system is actually not a bad concept at all. It has its proven value, of course, on the waterfront, swarming with bobbing heads in dark water, where young people accept a responsibility to another person for their welfare, if for whatever reason that other person is struggling and having trouble. Literally, trouble staying afloat. This has a value, I think, that is fully transferable to later episodes in life, where figuratively we find ourselves over our heads. Your buddy isn't necessarily an expert lifeguard, but just another ordinary person who understands and shares our human vulnerability, and who stands by us while we might push ourselves to be stronger, who's there to grasp our hand when the lifeguard calls for a buddy check, that familiar moment where two hands clasp and raise above the water. It's an important skill that we can share with each other on land as well. The second little lesson of mine was that somewhere, I'm sure, there is an immense collection of keychains and coin purses and bracelets and necklaces woven of those plastic bands in arts and crafts. I seem to remember it was called boondoggle, at least where I went to camp. And seeing it again in the hands of the children of the camp I was at called to mind the hours that I spent focused on some gaudy creation, which was neither art nor craft, though it served an important purpose. There was a huge value, I realized as an adult, to have something that you can do that absorbs your focus, that allows you to be engaged in something intricate and patterned, that allows you to shut out the intrusions of daily demands and existential worries. It's almost a Zen practice when you really get going, a form of active meditation. It's almost like a Zen practice, a form of active meditation. Maybe it's like baking bread or washing dishes, folding laundry, or most similarly, knitting. The product you end up is wonderful, it's fine, but that process that allows you to enter into it, that calms and centers your soul, is really, in so many ways, the most wondrous dimension of that kind of creation. Next, well, it's useful to learn to get along with people who you don't like very much. Just as you do not get to choose your bunkmates at camp, the vast majority of relationships we have in our lives are composed of people who get there by accident. I'm sure you could realize that in your own lives about those who are closest to you. Few of them are chosen, even some of our very best friends. They just seem to happen. So the fine art of compromise and conflict resolution over who gets the top bunk, or how the chores are divided in the cabin, or how the bullies among them are handled, and things like that come in awfully handy long after camp has ended. The next is that you can sew all the name labels you want into your underwear. The fact is, you're not going to come back from any journey with everything you left with. There will be things, labeled or unlabeled, that shall be lost. Sometimes it's underwear. Sometimes it could be illusions. Sometimes dreams. But if you're paying attention, you come back with things that you didn't take in the first place. Maybe someone else's underwear. It all has to go somewhere. But also there's other kinds of things that you return with that you don't necessarily understand their value until somewhat later in time. Maybe it's a special stone that you've picked up from the beach that you carry in your pocket for months to come. Or maybe, like me, it's a scar on your shin that you wear as a badge of courage for being part of that camping trip which you didn't quite make every step on the path and fell a few times. And maybe it's a friend that you make at camp that you know you'll never see again, but who you somehow always count as your friend as you think about it. When I was in Maine, I lost my favorite pen, a pen that was given to me on my ordination. And though it may not seem to you as a sufficient trade, I came back with 3 sand dollars that I picked up on the last morning. As I walked on the beach. And I truly hope someone is enjoying my pen as much as I still enjoy those sand dollars. The fifth is that if you hope to meet God, you're going to have to spend some time alone. It's not that God is shy or anything. It's just that it's very difficult to focus on the presence of the inescapable traces of God when your time and imagination is too full of the business of being. Being whatever it is we imagine ourselves to be, a child, a parent, a minister. You fill in the blank of what distracts you sometimes from the most essential things in the world. When we are alone, our relationship to all of those smaller dimensions of the self become lost against what Hopkins called the grandeur of God. Of course, God is not God's true and only name, so don't let that get in the way of making an acquaintance. God is just the word for the unnameable essence that pulses through creation and at the same time, in this very moment, through us. The vision and knowledge of God comes easiest when nothing or no one stands between us and the immanent, urgent energy of the holy, the sacred, the mystery. That, for me, is God. Talent shows, the next. They are only rarely and usually and only accidentally a showcase for talent. I feel I can say this considering that I appeared in 2 different groups on that Thursday night talent show at Ferry Beach. There were all kinds of silly skits and songs that were intentionally meant to be irreverent. But there were others who took the stage with little concern for the polish or the perfection of their offering, but had all their hearts into sharing something that they valued for whatever reason with the larger group. One woman whose father had died the week before sang a song that was a memorial to him. And another older man stood before us to sing his wife's favorite song. He and his wife had come to the camp for many years together, and she was now in a nursing facility, unable to come. And he sang, "Skylark, have you anything to say to me? Won't you tell me where my love can be? Is there a meadow in the mist where someone's waiting to be kissed?" And there wasn't a dry eye in the place. Seven, even in paradise, and maybe especially in paradise, we summon terrors and frights that live within us. After all, ghost stories seem to be an essential part of the lore of any self-respecting summer camp. I spent more than enough nights in a bunkhouse at Camp Towsey, prepared to fend off the notorious Towsey frog monster that was reputed to live in the lake in the depths and emerge in the darkness at night. It was reported several campers were missing from the last session. But you know, those kind of terrors don't have to live in the lake. All kinds of other scary creatures reside in the deep crevices of our own imaginations. They tell us we can't do things. They tell us we are not good enough. They tell us we don't count. They hold us accountable for standards impossible to meet. They tell us that life's hurts are somehow deserved. They are the demons that are banished only by shining a light directly upon them and recognizing that the only power they actually have is the power that we allow them. And as scary as they can be, at the end of almost every ghost story, the monster is sent packing, fended off, banished. It's a useful script to write into our own stories. The next is that for all of our differences, people we can learn quickly are remarkably the same. The kids at camp and the kids inside us still are hoping that there will be a place for them in this circle of friendship, or on the softball team, or at a table in the dining hall where there might be a seat where we could be welcomed. We learn early, and usually the wrong way, what it will take to earn the place that we want for ourselves in the world. The cynic learns to pretend that it really doesn't matter to them. Who cares? The clown struggles for and settles for laughs instead of love. The bully coerces and controls a situation to enforce the place they want to take in the world. And the goody two-shoes kids bust their behind to figure out what other people want and then do everything they possibly can to make the others happy. The shy kid isn't sure how to connect, so they find ways simply to disappear. And when you go back to camp as a grown-up, you learn that those old patterns are not the correct ones. And the best way, the only way to find your place your friends, your soul, your life is to trust your deepest self. Because if people don't connect to that, you are not connected. The next is that it's very easy to get lost, even in the most familiar territory. It doesn't take much. Maybe a familiar landmark is gone, or a change of light affects what you see in your place. You might have taken a small detour off the path and aren't sure where you are, because one tree looks an awful lot like the next. And you know suddenly that you are going in circles, and even though you know you'll get home, you're not sure just how or when. It's why at camp they have you take hikes in groups, so that somehow you are never alone, and you feel a little bit less lost in the company of others. At least you know for that time where your friends are, and sometimes that's as close to home as we ever get. And the last little lesson of mine from my experience in that camp is that there is a grand purpose for huge bonfires at night. A great purpose beyond just taking off the chill or roasting marshmallows. Those grand bonfires, which I'm sure you've all at one time or another experienced, give us the excuse to reenact what are some of the most ancient human rituals that we can know, that will go back beyond our capacity to remember, that give us reminders of our place in the universe. When there's a bonfire, we create a circle around it. We don't line up to face it. We gather in a circle where each other's faces are lit, illuminated by the glow of the fire. We become entranced by the power of one of the most basic elements of creation. The fleeting sparks fly up and carry our eyes up into the vast night sky, and those sparks mingle with the stars above us. And in that circle, stories are told, and songs are sung. And the flame, that ancient symbol of purification, over time is reduced to its most essential state of being. The light of the fire gives us vision to see things that the daylight somehow conceals. And in that light, differences dissipate. And we know deeply that we are somehow connected to one another. Those in that circle and those beyond our imagination. We stand shoulder to shoulder at the foot of what is a great mystery, in a world that we shall be saved in, not by what we believe, or what we achieve, or what we know, but by the gentleness, the healing, the love of God, and of each other. May it be so.